Hey everybody, this is Brian Aiello. Today on Mirage, speculating on speculative fiction, we are going to be talking with Emma Hardcastle about Mitch Albom. Emma, have you heard of Mitch Albom?
He is my all-time favorite author. So yes, definitely heard of him.
What have you read of his?
Everything except for Tuesdays with Morrie. But in my defense, I've seen the movie.
There's a movie on Tuesdays with Morrie? I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a movie, and there is a movie of the 5 people you meet in heaven as well.
Really? Oh, maybe I knew that. Who's in 5 people that you meet in heaven?
Oh, there's I don't know off the top of my head. Let me find out because it's going to bug me if I don't research it.
Well, I'm looking up Tuesdays with Morrie because I did not know that.
The guy in Tuesdays with Morrie, I think, does loads of voices for The Simpsons, but I can't tell you what they call him.
Oh, I know his name. Of course I don't know his name. His name is
dark hair.
He was in the movie Fat Boy Run, right?
Hank Azaria.
Yeah, Hank Azaria. He was in that movie. Yeah, English people love him, actually, don't they? He was in the Birdcage. He was great. I love that guy.
I like him. I'll just search the 5 people and get you the name of the guy because he's quite well known as well.
For some reason, I want to say that's going to be
John Voight and Jeff Daniels.
Jeff Daniels. Wow, that's got a cast too.
He plays is it the Blue Man? He plays like the circus guy. And then John Voight's the guy that dies.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So spoiler anybody if you've not read it, somebody dies. Whole point.
Oh yeah. This is a spoiler podcast. We don't even care if you read these books or not. If you're not already a Mitch Albom fan, you should be listening. You should go out and read those books right now.
From the title of the book, The 5 People You Meet in Heaven, if you can't get that somebody has to die for that, there's something wrong.
Man, he dies pretty spectacular in that book too, as a hero. He saves a little girl from an accident at a carnival. Am I correct? I mean, it's been a few years since I've read that.
Yeah, he is a grumpy old guy and he works at a fairground where he's always worked all his life, and he blames his father and his family for basically not allowing him to ever go anywhere or do anything. He kind of blames everybody else for this standstill life that he's had. And this little girl is playing beneath, I think it's like I don't know, some kind of Ferris wheel or something, and one of the carts comes loose and falls, and he goes to push her out of the way and it kills him, and then the last thing he feels is her hand in his. So that's kind of how it sets off.
There was a carnival just recently down the street from my house. I called it a death ride.
The death ride.
I just feel like Coney Island obviously is like right down the street too. I just feel like those rides are like just waiting to break down and kill people. The Cyclone is like the famous wooden roller coaster. Actually, they might have gotten torn down after the hurricane.
I'm not overly a fan of rides, to be honest. I'll go on, like, I will do roller coasters, but I don't like anything that goes upside down. You know, if they have to strap you in from above, there's a problem.
But I'm very untrustworthy. I don't think that, like, carnivals, like if you have to walk on a boardwalk and there's like sand underneath the carnival itself, I don't really want to go to that place. But if I have to walk through like several layers of security and there are people with guns walking around to make sure they're
well, like, I suppose if you're doing like theme parks are different to like carnivals.
Yeah, that's
what I'm Disney. Saying. Can you imagine how well maintained Disney is compared to like a little carnival?
Disney, so I suppose it depends which one. Or like a Six Flags. I'll definitely ride the crap out of those rides. But like a little carnival on the side of the road, I'll look at that place like a little leery. I don't think I really necessarily want to ride any of those rides. And that's what I pictured he worked at, like a carnival on Coney Island or something. Do you remember where he was from? I think Pennsylvania.
I don't remember where he was from, no. I know that the name of the pier, Ruby Pier, was named after the owner of the pier's wife. There was some kind of fire in the book, and she's one of the people that he meets in heaven, and she explains that the pier was named after her. But that's all I know. I don't know whereabouts it was.
It might have been all fictionalized.
It could have been fiction, yeah, but I don't actually remember it saying. It probably does, but I don't remember it saying.
Ruby Pier, also known as Salt Pier. You know what was interesting? I read, to get ready for this podcast, I read Phone Calls from Heaven. We'll talk about it. You've read it as well, right?
Yes,
I think you said
I love it.
The only one that you can read.
Yeah, I like
It was a
that.
really interesting book. I had a really hard time reading it. I mean, I think we'll talk about it in a minute, but the town that he wrote about in that is in Michigan. There's actually a town called Coldwater Springs in Michigan, but he made up the Coldwater Springs that he writes about in the book.
All right.
So he fictionalized a actual town to write about. He tells that he, puts that disclaimer at the end of the novel. But Ruby Piers is where he writes. Yeah, you're absolutely. You have a great memory in terms of like these small details.
Well, I read that book every year, so that's why
you
I
reread
remember
books. And there are so many books out there. How do you reread books?
There's very few books that I reread, but Mitch Albom's books, I reread one of them every year. So like it's usually either The Timekeeper or The Five People You Meet in Heaven, and I reread them every year.
So what is it about Mitch?
Favorites.
Why do you return to his books so often? Do you think?
I just think there's meaning. I just think they're absolutely beautiful behind them. I just love the stories and how he gets across his morals and values in there and what he believes in. And I just think anybody that's suffered a loss, if you were to read that book, I just think it'd help. I think he means to write like that. I think it's just who he is, because he does a lot of charity work and he works with a lot of people who have had really hard lives. And I think he just sees something in life that other people don't. And I just love it. I just really do.
Well, who is Mitch Albom?
He is, according to his website, he started as a sports writer. So he was like a journalist, and he worked and worked and worked. And that's kind of how he met Maury. He re-met Maury because he was his college or university teacher, and he kind of made friends with him and they got to know each other. And then when he left college, Maury said to him, be one of the good ones and come back and see me and keep in touch. And he promised he would, and he never did. And then because he was so busy, he was watching TV one day and watching the news, and Maury was on the news, and he was basically inviting people in to watch him die, to find out what it's like to die of this disease that he had, which is Lou Gehrig's disease, I think. And he felt really guilty because he'd not been to see him. So then he got back in touch with him, and every Tuesday he travelled to see him. And when he found out that he could pay his medical bills, but he didn't want his family to be left with all this, this debt or whatever, Mitch decided he wanted to tell his story, and he wrote the book, and then the money from the book went to pay for Maury's medical bills. So that's kind of how he started, because he tells a story in one of his videos that when he first went back to see Maury, he said he didn't realize that I think he describes him as the old guy at one point, was actually out on the curb waiting for him because he was so excited to see him. And he said that he was pulling up, and as he pulled up, somebody phoned him about work, and he was so selfish at the time that he chose to take the phone call over getting out of the car to give Maury a hug and greet him. So he actually slid down in his car and lied to Maury and took this phone call. And he explained it as though he had been there in this really busy schedule and valued work of other people more. So he tells this really lovely story through this video about how he got to know Maury again. But he actually started as a journalist, and that's kind of, I think, how it kicked off from what I've learned about him.
It's Lou Gehrig disease, right? ALS, that Maury dies of in the book, right?
Yeah, well, it's true. It's a true story. So he actually died of it in real life.
It's very interesting because it was my first contact with that disease, and watching that reading about that character's demise was very interesting. The idea that his lungs stopped working was very compelling. He says something in that book that has stuck with me throughout, the rest of the time. He says basically it's very comfortable to die of suffocation.
Yeah,
as I cough. That's hilarious.
It is a really, really sad story. I've not read the book. I own the book.
I'm sorry, just to repeat, you have not read Tuesdays with Maury.
No, I own Tuesdays with Maury because it was actually the book that I bought from this independent bookstore that I'm now in touch with.
Okay, well, I think it's unfair to talk about it since you've not read it. And so we have I know
what happens. I've seen the movie.
Yeah. Oh, okay. It's very interesting. That catapulted his career, and he wrote The 5 People You Meet When You Die, I guess immediately afterward, but it didn't get published for 6 years. I mean, the guy's career is amazing. He sold like 10 million books, made it to the New York Times bestseller list with People You Meet When You Die.
Yeah, he apparently it took him a long time to get it published because the publishers were turning him down, saying that nobody wanted to read a depressing memoir, and nobody was looking for memoirs at the time. So those publishers that turned it down, I bet they're kicking themselves.
I mean, when I read his work, I'm looking for something. Would you say the same thing? Are you looking for something when you're reading his work? I call it death fantasy. And I mean, to get into it, this is a podcast about speculative fiction. And when you're looking at Tuesdays More, you're not really seeing a lot of magic. You're not really seeing a lot of fantasy or horror or science fiction. What you're seeing is a man talking to his mentor who's dying. And when I read Tuesdays with Morrie, what I'm reading is a man looking at another man dying and trying to peer beyond the veil of life, right? Trying to get a glimpse of what's beyond the moment of death.
I think that's why I like it, because he, in every book that he writes, he gives some kind of new possibility, and that's what I look for. I look for his beliefs and his perhaps wonderings, and clearly he's obviously sat and thought, right, well, what could possibly happen after you die? So it's his thoughts, and I'm looking for clues as to what went through his mind as he were reading it.
It's very interesting too, because I like I said, I've read the recent run Phone Calls from Heaven, and we'll talk about it. But Mitch Albom, to me, he's like a character in his books, because you kind of want him to know something in a way. He's not an author; he's something more. But he's right. You're right. He was a sports author. I mean, he was a sports journalist. He's this, schmo guy who wrote about basketball for most of his life. You know what I mean? He's like sports dude, not I'm going to write about spirituality in the afterlife guy.
Yeah. He's also in a band, and I believe he's in a band with Stephen King.
Nothing about religiosity in his Wikipedia page, though. Have you, through your research, been able to glean any kind of religion or spirituality from his biography or things that he's said?
He has said on his website that he doesn't feel he writes about death. He thinks he writes about life. The death part's just to get people's attention.
So
I don't know.
But he never writes about God, right? 5 People They Meet When You Die. He doesn't meet God, or does he? I can't remember. He doesn't meet God. He doesn't meet a Jesus. He doesn't meet an Allah. He doesn't meet a Buddha. He doesn't meet a deity type figure. He just meets 5 people from his life. His mother, his combat veteran, his father, his 2 other people that I can't remember.
It was the last 2 people were the girl, the Ruby that owned the pier, and the little girl that he killed in the war. That he thought when he died that he was holding the hand of the girl he tried to save, and it wasn't. It was the girl he killed in the hut when he was in the war.
Huh.
Because he set fire to a hut, I think. And then realised that he thought somebody was in there, and his sergeant, who is one of the people he meets in heaven, basically dragged him away and then shot him, which is why he's got a limp, because he wanted to go back in. So the sergeant shot him in the leg and said, no, you're not going back in, thinking that he was going to kill himself.
Yeah.
Gave him the limp, and there actually was somebody in there. It was a little girl who he killed.
That's horrible. But there is no deity. There is no God in any of these books.
No, not as far as I know.
So that's interesting, but he does not ever talk about that type of stuff. He doesn't talk about religion in terms of that subject matter, does he?
No, I mean, it says where he grew up, but it doesn't say anything about his religion. And maybe he doesn't have one. Maybe he just writes because he's speculating himself. It says they was born on the 23rd of May, 1958 I can't pronounce it, but it's Passaic, and then it says NJ, so I'm assuming that's New Jersey.
It's probably an Indian name. Let me take a look at it. Or Native American name.
He lived in Buffalo for a while, then settled in Oakland, close to Philadelphia.
Passaic. Yeah, it's right down the street from me, actually. Passaic, New York, or New Jersey.
Yeah, that's where he grew up.
It's like I look at my window right now. I'm actually looking at Passaic County.
All right, well, very close then.
Yeah. I'm sucking in air potentially that was in Mitch Albom's lungs. Maybe that's why I write so well.
Maybe. Can you send some of it my way, please?
I'm gonna have to edit that part out. Unfortunately, I didn't mean to say it's the illness in me. I'm not feeling very well today.
The joys of being ill.
The joys of being ill. I can blame all of my my misspeakings on it. So yeah, did you reading these books get a better or different idea behind his work? Did you think there was a God in the writing?
There is a God in the Timekeeper.
Oh, there is.
Yeah,
I started reading it and I didn't really get very far because I got distracted. I'm trying to read Terry Pratchett too at the same time, and I'm not like Terry Pratchett.
I don't read Terry Pratchett. No, I've read Terry Pratchett with Stephen Baxter.
Oh, really?
Some kind of science fiction one that they did, but I've only read the one. But the Timekeeper is about Father Time and how Father Time became who he is, and God actually punishes him in it. So there is a God.
Interesting. Okay, that's a straight up fantasy piece.
Yes, he puts him in a cave for all these years to suffer hearing and seeing what creating time is, what the problems of time have caused everybody, and then it gives him a chance to redeem himself at the end.
And Phone Calls from Heaven is a straight up crime novel with a tiny little sliver of potential fantasy at the end.
Yes, it's the one where everybody receives calls from their dead loved ones.
Yes.
Is it? Yes. And I think it turns out not to be at the end.
It turns out not to be. Somebody's manipulating voicemail messages, which is fairly obvious throughout. And I thought it was an interesting novel because you either go into the reading one of two ways. You're either incredibly skeptical, or I would imagine if you want there to be a heaven, you're incredibly, going, oh, this is an amazing experience. I would imagine you're wanting this to be an incredibly amazing experience where the phone calls are actually coming from heaven or something along those lines.
Well, when I was reading it, I was kind of hoping that, given the other kind of fiction he writes, I was hoping it was, and there was some kind of fantasy element to it. But I enjoyed it nevertheless because I think it leads you to think that. But he puts like sample chapters of all his books on his website anyway, so if anybody did want to go and make their own decision, they could do.
No, it's very interesting. When I was a kid, my mom, when I was like 9 years old, way beyond the age where you believe in Santa Claus or whatever, my parents had already been divorced. We were living in Florida, and it was one Christmas where she set up toys on Christmas Eve. She wouldn't let us in the house. We did the midnight mass thing. And after we got out of church, she opened the door and all these presents were spread out, and we couldn't figure it out at first. You know what I mean? It's like all these toys. It's like, oh my God, what happened? My sister did it first. Oh, Santa Claus came. And like as a 9-year-old, I went, for like 30 minutes, there was a Santa Claus because I couldn't figure out how all those toys got into the apartment. Like, and that was what that final little moment was for me when the wife called. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it would be interesting if he did something Christmassy, because he could explore Father Christmas and the Tooth Fairy and the Easter Bunny and all these the characters that kids believe in. I think he would be an ideal candidate to explore that topic, and to write something fictional about, for adults about that, to kind of fantasize the whole thing. But it'll just be interesting to see what he does next, because obviously his latest one, The Magic Strings of Frankie Presto, I can never remember which one it is. Let me see if his website says the name exactly.
Is he still doing pretty well? Is he consistently making the New York Times bestseller list?
I don't know, actually. That's a good question. Frankie Presto it was. I was bought it for Christmas and got round to reading it a couple of months ago, and
what did you think of the
quality?
Good. It was good.
It was good, but
The Magic Strings of Frankie Presto.
Yeah, I'm not really into music. It was like a rock and roll kind of thing, and this character, basically all his life it goes from being like an immigrant to this really famous music star to him dying, and death is telling his story. And it was interesting, but I felt that there was way, way too much backstory. Like for me, the book could have been half as long as it was, and I would still have enjoyed it. Probably more so because it just went into every little aspect of this guy's life, and I found myself getting a bit fed up. But I mean, I'm glad that I read it and I still enjoyed it. I enjoy all his books, but as far as in the line of the other books go, it would be my least favorite.
It doesn't even warrant his own Wikipedia page. Neither does The First Call from Heaven. That's disappointing.
I think he's mostly known for People You Meet in Heaven and Timekeeper, and Tuesdays with Morrie, obviously.
For One More Day. A lot of his stuff was made into. Did you like that?
Yeah, I really liked that one.
The first book was sold by Starbucks.
Wow.
For One More Day. What did you like about For One More Day?
I just like the idea that it gets one more day with somebody that is lost. Because the amount of times when you sit, if you lose somebody and you sit and you think, if I just had one more day with that person, the things I would tell them and the things I would ask them. And I just think he explores something that a lot of people probably goes through everybody's mind at some point when they lose somebody, probably more than once. So I liked that he kind of explored that, and he did it in a really light-hearted, soft way. It wasn't gruesome, it wasn't unpleasant, it was a really sweet read, and I think that's why I like his work, because nothing's offensive. It's just, it is what it is, and you just get a nice, sometimes quick, because his books are never really that long, just comfortable read, and I think that's why I like his work so much.
Yeah, I guess being a father and husband now, I would hate to lose my family, the intimacy that I have at this moment in time. But everybody else that I've ever met in my life, I feel like I'm on a boat and on this river that moves so fast that it just doesn't really pay to develop these lost type feelings for any of them. They're so far behind at this point. Have you lost anybody that you would like to have that one more day with? I mean, I know you live where you grew up, right? And probably everybody that you've ever known in your life is probably right around you.
Grandparents.
But I lost my grandparents. My grandfather on my dad's side died when he was very young, so I never really met him. My step-grandfather was kind of a, racist dude. But both my mom's parents were awesome people that died in my early 20s. But I mean, they were older. They were nearing 80. So I mean, life ends. You know what I mean?
I think when I lost my granddad when I was young, and that was difficult. And I think back then, especially, I would have wanted extra days, like anybody normally does, especially a child that loses somebody close to them. But I don't really think it matters how old you are when you lose somebody. I think you still want that extra day, even if it's just one day. And I think that's why he's chosen For One More Day, because he could have said for one more week or for one more year, and it's not. It's just, even if it's just 24 hours, it's better than nothing. You know what I mean?
How does he handle that one more day? Is it one more day as the character sick? Is it one more day in the prime of their life? Is it one more day how? Does he have to remind them of all the stuff they've accomplished, or do they come down from heaven after they've died and get to share with them the experiences of dying and doing?
It's a few years since I've read it, so off the top of my head I don't know, but I'm due to read a Mitch book this year anyway, so you
need to read Tuesdays with Morrie, so there's no excuses. Read his best work. That actually is a beautiful piece of work, and also it really puts Lou Gehrig's disease right in the front row, which I think everybody should kind of have a better understanding of.
I think that was the point as well. He wanted to raise awareness and raise money for Morrie, who was paying all these medical bills, and he wanted to help. I mean, he was the guy that invited the TV lot in anyway. That wasn't anything to do with Mitch Albom. That he was doing that before Mitch got involved. I think he just wanted to help. But yeah, I need to read Tuesdays with Morrie. But if I'm going to reread any of the books that I've already gone through, I think I'll read For One More Day, because I haven't read that in a while, and just refresh my memory.
Just to go back into Lou Gehrig's disease, I heard something really horribly scary. Every single veteran, be it in the Navy, Marines, Army, Coast Guard, for some really crazy reason, they have a 60% more likely chance of developing ALS than anybody else.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, me either. It's really incredibly scary. So I mean, just by serving in the military, you're 60% more likely to have that disease.
I had no idea. I never knew that statistic.
NBC. So I don't know. It's an important book. I think he was doing a lot there, and I think he deserves to have some success.
Yeah, but his success isn't just from writing either. He does a radio show. He's a journalist. He does like stage shows.
Does he still do sports? Let's see, radio host. What's he doing radio?
I think so, but his music, he's in the Rock Bottom Remainders, and in there there's Stephen King, there's the guy that did Simpsons, Matt, I can never pronounce his surname, but he's in there.
Groening? Matt Groening?
That's the one.
Yeah.
There's a lot of other people as well, and you'd be surprised. I mean, it says on his website, it says by day they're authors, really famous authors, but once a year they shed their pen and pencils and become rock stars, and they do music as well. So he's kind of got that. But yeah, him and Stephen King, who we've already done a show on.
That's so awesome.
We've done a
I think
Mirage
one of my favorite satirists is in that band too, Dave Barry.
Yes, he's in it.
He's like one of my favorite authors.
He's a lead guitarist.
That's absolutely insane. I did not know that. That raises Mitch Albom's cred level in my book quite a bit.
There's Greg, I don't know whether it's Ills or Isles, I can never pronounce names, James McBride, Janine Sabino, Amy Tan, Ridley Pearson, Scott Theroux, Roy, I want to pronounce it as Blount, but it probably is Blunt, I don't know, and Dave Barry as well.
Dave Barry? Oh, Dave Barry, I just said his name.
Barry, yeah.
That name sounds so familiar. It's because you just said it, retard. I'm sick. Leave me alone. Amy Tan, she's pretty famous too. What's she doing in that band?
Vocals.
Oh, vocals. Did you just say that?
Yes.
Oh my god, what is wrong with me? I saw Kevin Smith the other day.
Who?
Kevin Smith.
Who's that?
A director. Mallrats.
I know of Mallrats, but I wouldn't have known who the director was. But okay, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I don't know if it was him or not. On Ridiculous story, he has a comic book shop in Jersey down on the coast. It's about maybe 45 minutes from where I live, and he was doing some kind of Kevin Smith lookalike contest.
All right.
So I'm driving, and you have to stop in Jersey to let pedestrians cross, and I stopped, and there was freaking Kevin Smith right in front of me.
Did you not wind your window down and shout, Kevin, and chase him?
No, I looked at this guy, and he was smug, like dork smug, like total.
Like I'm so famous smug.
Yeah, like this guy had every inch of Kevin Smith down pat, or I almost ran over Kevin Smith.
Wow. Well, that'd have been a story, isn't it? Sick guy runs over Kevin Smith.
I wasn't sick then.
Ah.
I was okay then. I was fine.
Okay, well, perfectly healthy guy runs over Kevin Smith.
I don't think it makes the news when you're healthy. I think only when you're sick.
Oh, okay. That's a shame.
Father of two runs over Kevin Smith and tries to get away.
Tackled and tasered by police.
No, I didn't mean it. Mitch Albom, yeah. So we're doing a podcast on Mitch Albom. He's an interesting guy. I mean, the reason that we were going to do him today is the idea of death fantasy, and I like the idea of death fantasy. The idea of more exists after life.
I guess he kind of inspired my new one, but I will never, ever be in the same league as the wonderful Mitch Albom. I think it's just because I enjoy that kind of genre because of him. Mm-hmm. I felt that I wanted to give it a go and write my own, which is why Noah Finn is what it is.
Noah Finn and the Art of Suicide.
That's the one.
Okay. Noah Finn and the Art of Suicide. And you explore an afterlife.
I explore the kind of bit in between. So between him dying and
is it like
kind of, yeah. He wakes up on a train on a New York subway train, and death is with him and telling him what's happened and basically trying to teach him lessons, and he wants him to learn these lessons before he receives his options, and the options is kind of his way of saying heaven or hell. But it explains in the book that obviously there is no heaven and hell, there is no God, there is only this entity who calls himself death and calls himself 1,000,001 other things. So it's quite, it explains it all, but to explain it on here, I'd just blow your mind. But it'd just bore you to death. So yeah, and I think the reason why I wrote that and trying to produce something like that is because I respect what Mitch Albom's doing so much and how well he's managed it. I just kind of figured I'd give it a go.
That's very interesting. That's fantastic. So he's on a train and he has been told that there is no heaven or hell. So is there a heaven and hell in your story?
No. Noah is under the impression that there is, because he's been brought up in a religious family. His friends believe in a God. His ex-wife believes in a God, but he's been a bit of a shit throughout his entire life. He's not been a nice person. He's had a lot of issues, drugs, adultery, all that kind of thing. And given the circumstances of his death, which I won't ruin for anybody that decides they want to read it eventually, he is killed and he wakes up after wanting to commit suicide, finally deciding he's not gonna, and then having his choice removed, and death is with him. And the only reason that he is death in the book is because Noah assumes he's death. He asks him if he's God at the beginning, and he says no. And he says, well, then who are you? And he says, well, at this moment in time, to you, I'm death, but to probably 1,001 other people at the moment, I'm also marriage, and I'm also birth, and I'm also sadness and happiness, and all these things that we humans have attached labels to and given names to just so that we can comprehend it and understand it. That's basically who he is. It's just one entity that is everything and all. He's not God, but we've called him God. He's not the devil, but we've called him the devil. He's just. That's him.
Yeah,
and he basically says to Noah, look, there is no such thing as suicide as a sin, because there's no such thing as sin, because there's no such thing as God. So there's nobody to judge whether it's a sin or not. So throughout this whole thing, one of his lessons is basically just grasping that he's dead, and this is the truth. This is what life is, and what's going to happen to him, and what his options mean, and whether they are heaven and hell or whether they are just options. And this entity has unfortunately got the job of giving him it for the reason that I'll explain in the book. So it's I've tried to go, I didn't want it to be religious because I wanted to appeal to people that did believe in a God, but also that didn't believe in a God. So that the people that believed in a God would see this entity as God, and the people who didn't would figure it out for themselves. So that's kind of where I'm going with it. It's good fun to write. I can see why Mitch likes to write this kind of thing, but it's kind of sad as well, because you've got to deal with the character's horrible life and what happens to him and his family. And obviously it's set on 9/11, so there's a whole horrible aspect of 9/11. Yeah, so there's that.
He committed suicide on 9/11. He could have just pleaded and let the terrorists do it for him. Oh, he was going to. That's right, and 9/11 did it for him.
Yeah, he was gonna, and then he is basically scared. He decides he's not gonna, and it kind of, the noise of the incoming plane kind of throws him and stops him from jumping, and then he decides he doesn't want to die, and then it's too late anyway, and his choice is taken.
Did you write it first person or third person?
It's written third person, present tense.
Oh, good for you. That's a tough one.
It is tough, but I find it's easier to write the first draft because I feel like I'm just writing whatever's in my head. So this happens, and then this happens, and then this is said, and it's almost like it's happening now, so I can write it as if I'm recording the events as they're happening. So it's easier to write, but whether or not it's a good read is another question. But Mitch Albom is a big inspiration for me, and I'm one of his biggest fans. So.
Well, if you need if you want to read,
I think
I definitely will hook you up when you're finished. I'd love to take a look at it. Thank you. What the hell was I going to say though? I was going to ask about the first person, and then I was going to ask about something else. Did I mention I'm sick?
You mentioned you were sick.
I don't know if I mentioned that.
You probably forgot that you mentioned you were sick because you're sick.
Yeah, I'm sick. Richard Matheson is one of my favorite authors. He did the Will Smith vampire movie that came out about 8 years ago. God, I'm old. That felt like yesterday. You know what I'm talking about?
When you say vampire, do you mean zombie?
Are you arguing? I don't know if it was the zombie or vampire movie.
It's I Am Legend.
I Am Legend, yeah. Aren't they
zombies.
vampires?
Zombies, I think.
Or is it, can you say they're vampires and other people can say they're zombies, or are they 100% zombies? Oh.
I don't know. I took them to be zombies, but that could be. I don't know. I don't really know. I don't think it ever clarifies what they are, to be honest.
I think in the book, it's like a novella. I think he describes them as being vampires. I think historically the book is vampires, but I don't care. The movie was horrible, right? I mean, the movie wasn't very good. The movie was good in the apocalyptic New York, right? That was genius. And then it got really bad.
It wasn't much of a storyline.
Right. I don't think so.
But I feel like I want to call them zompires or whatever, just to make it half and half. But
I wonder what happened with Will Smith. I wonder if it's like he couldn't read or something. Like he just didn't do good movies. He's a great actor. He's got great personality, but like his story, the movies just that he did were bad.
I don't think it's him, because I like Will Smith in movies, and I actually thought he was very well cast for it. I thought that he was good in it, but I just thought that the story behind it didn't have as much oomph as it could have done.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, like he was a great actor.
That's not his fault.
He had great following, but the movies that he did just did not have an ending. I mean, the superhero movie that he did, where he played the drunk superhero, what a great idea. Fell flat. Hancock, yeah. He had these really great ideas. This one the super villain movie that he did just now recently, that should have been a freaking gold mine.
Suicide Squad,
dead flat, right? I mean, it was horrible.
I feel like I'm kind of acting as your movie Wikipedia.
No, what you're acting at is my brain. I mean, like, yeah, you're my main Wikipedia.
I only know that because I watched it the other day, so.
You fill in my gaps very nicely.
But I think him and the girl that plays Harley Quinn are the best characters in that movie.
Oh, Harley Quinn's getting her own movie, though. I don't know. I couldn't watch it.
Without them, it'd be a bit flat.
He fills up the screen so gigantically that, honestly, him in an ensemble does not work for me. I only watched a streaming version of it, but it just felt like the movie felt claustrophobic when he was on screen.
He plays Deadshot, doesn't he? And I think Deadshot on his own could have probably had a movie. But I think they just tried to cram too many characters into that book, because there were a lot of characters that just seemed to be, hi, I'm a character, I'm present, but I'm just
That's what the beginning of the movie was, wasn't it? Like the whole 30-40 minutes of the movie was like, hey, I'm a character.
It introduces all the characters.
I'm a character too. This is my story.
But then doesn't do anything with them, so...
That movie was a waste, and I think there's going to be a sequel, and it made like hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, and whatever. The reason I mention him though is that Richard Matheson wrote "What Dreams May Come," which you're probably familiar with.
I love that.
The Robert Williams movie. Oh, you love the
book as well.
Oh my god!
Book and I Am Legend, the book. I love them both.
Doesn't end well. I don't think it has a great ending, but my god, Summerland is like my fantasy of death. The idea of the universe and. Oh, did you?
I cried through most. I cried through the 5 People You Meet in Heaven. I cried through that one that you just mentioned. I cried at Bambi. I cried at Dumbo. I cried at everything.
Well, I think you're supposed to cry at Dumbo and Bambi. I think that's why they were made.
But yeah, I'm quite anything emotional. That if I cry, then it's not necessarily an indication that it's an emotional story. It's just an emotional Emma. So I can't really judge a book or a movie on how it makes me feel, because they all make me feel the same way. So, I'm not the best judge, but I loved them. I really enjoyed them.
So Emma, Brian's encyclopedic brain. What the hell did I mention that for?
Because we're talking death fantasy.
Oh, death fantasy. I think that's a fantastic.
Something to do with the director.
I think that's really good. Defending Your Life is another really good death fantasy. Have you ever seen that? With Albert Brooks and Meryl Streep. You've never seen Defending Your Life? Oh,
no, but I will write it down and watch it.
Oh, it's really fantastic. Albert Brooks dies in a car accident and he goes to heaven. And basically, heaven is a really interesting place. Heaven is not heaven. I don't know what heaven is. This is a way station. A way station where you get a motel room and a public defender. and you could eat whatever you want. Heaven, this way station's like a buffet of food. You don't gain weight, you don't get indigestion, whatever. And while you're there, you defend your life. You have like 5 court dates where they pick various scenes of your life, and you have to explain whether or not you did the right thing or not. And
the 5 court dates you meet in heaven.
Well, at the end of the 5 days, if they deem that you've lived a whatever, I can't remember, the good life, bad life, then you either get to go to heaven or you get recycled back to earth to live again. It's just a really fantastic
I can't remember what they call this movie, but there was one in my mind that is, I can't remember who's in it, I just remember the storyline, and it's an angel that falls in love with a human and clips his wings to be with her, and like day 1 of being with her, she gets killed. And he has to be like a human the rest of his life without her. And I cannot remember.
Is this Nicolas Cage?
It could be. Yes, that rings a bell. But I loved it. I loved the concept of it because it's really tragic. And that sounds so depressing and miserable on my part. But I loved how tragic the story was. And I just think that kind of falls into the death aspect of it, the death fantasy aspect of it, because he's kind of come from death into life and he's kind of done it the other way around. He's had to be stuck in life rather than in death. It's kind of backwards.
Looking through Nicolas Cage's IMDb is like reading War and Peace.
I'll just Google it. The joys of Google.
Go ahead, Jews of Google.
Fallen Angel. Here we go. Nicolas Cage, Fallen Angel. City of Angels, it's called.
City of Angels is what it's called.
Meg Ryan. I knew that there was somebody famous in it. Meg Ryan's in it.
How dare you? Nicolas Cage is famous.
No, I meant the female lead.
I don't care.
I love Nicolas Cage, but I meant the female lead.
She is like a poster child for why you should not get plastic surgery. Age gracefully.
Leave Meg Ryan alone. I like Meg Ryan.
Hey, my wife says the exact same thing when I make that exact same comment. And she glares at me.
She's nice.
Leave Meg Ryan
alone.
Yeah,
I'm glaring at you through the screen, Brian. Leave Meg Ryan alone.
Meg Ryan.
We women like Meg Ryan
so much. She was like the ingenue of choice back in the 90s. When Harry Met Sally was one of my favorite movies.
I love that movie. I like it when she's singing really badly down the karaoke.
Man, I'm having a hard time pulling more death fantasies up. I've written a few.
I think there's plenty out there, but they're hidden in other genres.
It's very true. Have you read The Egg?
No, but you keep telling me about The Egg, and I need to read The Egg. It's Andy Weir, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna. Have you Googled it yet? If not, I'm gonna do it right now for you and send you a link.
No,
I'm gonna send you a link.
I can do it because I've got Google open.
And you're gonna read it live. And you're gonna read it live on the air right now.
Where are you sending me the link? Email or?
Yeah, I'll send it email.
Okay.
Will you read it live?
If you want. Can't guarantee I won't muck it up because I don't. If you've seen all about my book videos on YouTube, I muck them up somewhat shocking. I don't do well reading stuff live, but I can give it a go.
Oh, you should. I can't wait to post my old man walks the dog video today. I was walking up a hill and I started recording. It's all me just huffing and puffing and picking up dog poo.
Okay, hang on a minute. Right, so this is The Egg. You were on your way home when you died. It was a car accident, nothing particularly remarkable, but fatal nonetheless. You left behind a wife and 2 children. It was a painless death. The EMTs tried their best to save you, but to no avail. Your body was so utterly shattered you were better off, trust me, and that's when you met me. So is this death that's...
No, you got to read the whole story.
You want me to read the whole story aloud?
It's only like 800 words. It's really short.
Okay, right. And that's when you met me. What happened, you asked. Where am I? You died, I said matter-of-factly, no point in mincing words. There was a truck and it was skidding. Yup, I said. I died. Yup, but don't feel bad about it. Everyone dies. You look around. There was nothingness. Just you and me. What is this place, you asked? Is this the afterlife? More or less, I said. Are you God? Yup, I'm God. My kids and my wife, you said. What about them? Will they be all right? That's what I like to see. I said, you just died and your main concern is for your family. That's good stuff right there. You looked at me with fascination. To you, I didn't look like God. I just looked like some man or possibly a woman, some vague authority figure maybe, more of a grammar school teacher than the Almighty. Don't worry, I said, they'll be fine. Your kids will remember you as perfect in every way. They didn't have the time to grow contempt for you. Your wife will cry on the outside, but will be secretly relieved. To be fair, your marriage was falling apart. If it's any consolation, she'll be very guilty for feeling relieved. Oh, you said, so what happens now? Do I go to heaven or hell or something? Neither, you'll be reincarnated. Oh, so the Hindus were right. All religions are right in their own way, I said. Walk with me. You followed along as we strode through the void. Where are we going? Nowhere in particular. It's just nice to walk while we talk. So what's the point then? When I get reborn, I'll just be a blank slate, right? A baby, so all my experiences and everything I did in this life won't matter. Not so. You have with you all the knowledge and experiences of your past life. You just don't remember them right now. I stopped walking and took you by the shoulders. Your soul is more magnificent, beautiful, and gigantic than you can possibly imagine. A human mind can only contain a tiny fraction of what you are. It's like sticking your finger in a glass of water to see if it's hot or cold. You put a tiny part of yourself into the vessel, and when you bring it back out, you've gained all the experiences it had. You've been in a human for the last 48 years, so you haven't stretched out yet and felt the rest of your immense consciousness. If we hung out here for long enough, you'd start remembering everything, but there's no point to doing that between each life. How many times have I been reincarnated then? Oh, lots and lots, and in a lot of different lives. This time around, you'll be a Chinese peasant girl in 540 AD. Oh, that's interesting. That's not part of the story. Wait, what? You're sending me back in time? Well, I guess technically time as you know it only exists in your universe. Things are different where I come from. Where you come from? Oh, sure, I come from somewhere else, and there are others like me. I know you'll want to know what it's like in there, but honestly, you won't understand. Oh, you said, a little let down. But wait, if I get reincarnated to other places in time, I should have interacted with myself at some point. Sure, happens all the time, and with both lives only aware of their own lifespan, you don't even know it's happening. So what's the point of it all? Seriously, I asked. You're asking me for the meaning of life. Isn't that a little stereotypical? I love that. Well, it's a reasonable question, you persisted. I looked you in the eye. The meaning of life, the reason I made this whole universe is for you to mature. You mean mankind, you want us to mature? No, just you. I made this whole universe for you. With each new life, you grow and mature and become a larger and greater intellect. Oh, right, okay. Right, just me. What about everyone else? There is no one else. In this universe, there's just you and me. You stared blankly at me. But all the people on Earth, all you, different incarnations of you. Wait, I'm everyone? Now you're getting it, I said with a congratulatory slap on the back. I'm every human being who ever lived, or who will ever live. Yes, I'm Abraham Lincoln, and you're John Wilkes Booth too, I added. I'm Hitler, you said appalled, and you're the millions he killed. I'm Jesus, and you're the millions who followed him. You fell silent. Every time you victimized someone, you were victimizing yourself. Every act of kindness you've done to yourself. Every happy and sad moment ever experienced by any human was or will be experienced by you. You thought for a long time. Why do all this? Because someday you will become like me. Because that's what you are. You're one of my kind. You're my child. Whoa, you said, incredulous. You mean I'm a god? No, not yet. You're a fetus. You're still growing. Once you've lived every human life throughout all time, you will have grown enough to be born. So the whole universe, you said, it's just an egg, I answered. And now it's time for you to move on to your next life, and I sent you on your way.
I love it.
That's pretty good. Yeah, that's really good. I had no idea it was going to go that way.
The story has been
Stupidly,
translated into like 25 languages.
Yeah, it's a lovely story, actually.
Hello?
Yeah, I like it. I'm glad you made me read it. Hi, can you hear me?
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, I can hear you. Hello.
Okay. Hi. Sorry, I wasn't sure if I put you on mute to come or not.
No, I can hear you. I could hear you going, hello, in the background. Yeah, no, I like it. I'm glad you made me read it.
That story has been translated into 25 languages. And honestly, it's so interesting. I had a thought this time reading, I've read it like so many times. This thought was when he stuck his finger in the water and, you know, he can't, what did he say? It was something about lukewarm, hot, lukewarm, something along those lines, the intermingling of, Can you find that line again? It's like near the middle.
I've just come out of it.
Oh, okay. But it's very interesting because he wrote The Martian with the help of his community, basically. You know, he'd write a chapter, he'd post it on his website, and you know, his followers would critique it for him as he's writing it. Oh, you need to add this, or I love this, I love that characterization. Oh, you need to look at your tech this way or the other way. And it really, you know, catapulted him into this literary figure that I really appreciate, and a lot of other people do too.
There's a story that Stephen King reads aloud in one of his videos. If I can find the video, I'll send you on a link when this is over and done with. And he's reading a short story from one of his collections, and it's about death. It's about somebody that dies, and he walks down a hall and into an office, and there's a guy sat there next to a tube, and names come down the tube, and he's kind of like a pencil pusher, and he's really rude to him. And the guy's like, why am I here? Who are you? You know, the general questions. And it turns out that the guy's there to give him the choice to either disappear into oblivion, so just poof and that's that, and you never exist anymore, or you can choose to live your life exactly the way it was. So you would be born to the same mother, you would commit all the same crimes, you would be the same hideous human being or whatever it was that you did, or a brilliant, lovely whatever you were, I don't know. But this guy, turns out he's not done some pleasant things in his life, and he gets the choice to do either or. So if I can find the video, I'll send that to you, because he actually reads it aloud and it's really interesting. That's kind of a short death fantasy, a bit like the one I've just read you.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And as you were talking, I was thinking about Beetlejuice too.
Yeah, Beetlejuice.
Because the pencil pushers.
Beetlejuice.
That was when they went to the afterlife and they were in that kind of bureaucratic hell.
Yeah,
you know?
that kind of office. If you imagine that office that they go into, it's kind of, that's how I imagined it when I was reading the story. But if I can find the video, I'll send you it, because it's really good.
I mean, I guess throughout human history, I mean, we've always watched our kin die, pass away in front of us, and we've wondered, this thing that would look us in the eyes and make us comfortable and love us and give us sustenance, or we would provide sustenance to, would no longer be that thing. You know, stop animating, stop moving, stop emoting, and just start smelling and rotting. We'd have to wonder where they went, because obviously they're not that thing that's lying there anymore. And
but I don't think it's about the physical, is it? It's about the soul.
No, yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's about that thing that's inside, that person that's no longer there. I mean, obviously not there. If you've been to a funeral in your life, you know, no matter how much makeup they put on that body, that person is not there. That person that, you know, pulled you out of a, you know, helped pull your car out of the ravine when you got it stuck is not in that box. That person that you sat in front of when you ate chicken wings that one day is not in that box. That person that you talked to about X, Y, and Z is not in that box. I mean, that person that you're burying isn't the same person. That thing is empty of something. And you have to wonder, did that thing, that person, get emptied of whatever it was? Yeah, you want it to be, don't you? You want you to have something similar to that too. And I think death fantasies kind of try to answer that question. And religion kind of provides an answer to that too, in a more extreme manner, in a way, in a more harsh manner.
I think
in a more extreme manner too. It's like, this is the answer and you're going to get punished if you don't believe me. You know what I mean?
I think in a way I'm trying to answer that in Noah as well, because he actually gets taken to see his body and to see how it's being used and what it's being used for, because death's got a purpose for the body.
Do you think that you would ever want to, I mean, obviously you're going to publish Noah, you're going to do the marketing for it, and you're going to get the story out there, but do you think this is the last time you'll ever visit this topic? Or do you think that you'll try it again later on down the road? I mean, honestly, this could be the book for you. I mean, it sounds like a really great concept, really imaginative, a really great idea. It could catapult your career. It could be the thing that, you know, boom. You know, Miss Hardcastle, would you like some strawberries with your champagne in your condo in New York City? I don't know. I'm actually quoting that, what's it called, song?
I don't know. I have several. I haven't yet written the final ending, because I'm in two minds about the way I want to end it. So depending on how I end it, leaves other options open.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I forgot to put it on mute.
Fine, it's fine.
It's my
so it leaves other options.
If I want to cough on it, I can.
It's my party, and I'll cry if I want to.
It would
So
be
yeah,
interesting if you wrote both the endings, honestly. If you gave
well, that's what I was going to say. It leaves options for me to then go and write somebody else in the art of suicide, you know, do different people who have all tried to commit suicide, who have all met the same entity and who have all had different lessons and different options. So I could do that.
So
I
who do
have
you like
enough
more in your
material
book?
to do that.
Who do you like more in your book? Do you like oh God, what's your character's name again?
Noah
He's a cool
Finn.
name. Noah Finn. I love that name. Do you like Noah? That's actually my son's middle name. Do you like Noah Finn or do you like Death
Well,
more?
Death's kind of alias name is Christopher Saint. And he's Christopher Saint because he's playing on the Saint Christopher, because he
Oh,
wakes up
Saint. I
on,
thought you were saying Sin.
no,
Saint.
Saint.
S-A,
Yeah,
like
as
Saint
in like
Christopher.
the Saint Christopher. Yeah, so he's taking that name and playing on it because he knows he's trying to be funny. He's trying to wind up Noah because he said there's no religion and all that kind of thing. And yet here he is using this name and this meaning. But he explains all that in the book. But I like Christopher Saint more than I like Noah Finn because I like how he deals with stuff. I like how he explains stuff. He's very matter of fact. It's almost as if he's like, well, this guy's dead, so let's just cut to the chase. I'm not going to beat around the bush anymore. I'm just going to say what I mean. So he's very matter of fact, and he actually kind of toys with him sometimes. So, but never maliciously, just to make a point, to teach him a lesson. So I like him because I like his temperament and his kind of what goes through his mind, if you can say that it has a mind. But the whole point of him.
Obviously, I don't want to put you on the spot, so I'm going to put your character on the spot. Is there a heaven in your story? Is there a hell in your story, or is that giving away the ending?
That gives away the ending, or one of the endings, so I can't really go down that road. All I will say to you is,
can Noah stay on the train? Can he just sit there? Is that like I refuse to make a decision?
Death has a hope for him. Death has to give him the original options. The whole point of him being who he is, the reason that Death is who he is because he was the first ever murderer on this planet. So Noah has a hard time comprehending that because he says, well, you know, humans weren't always around. And he says, well, for a start, human, you won't be able to understand what I am. But I was the first ever murderer to ever exist on this planet. So I got this job. He basically produced religion. He was trying to meddle where he wasn't supposed to meddle. He was always supposed to be an observer and a teacher, and he meddled when he shouldn't have done and birthed religion, and therefore birthed a lot of other issues, a lot of fighting, and birthed a load of other stuff as well as religion. But
I love this. So when we open the door to your novel, we find more science fiction elements, don't we? It's not just a book about death. It's more. Then we find out that Christopher Saint isn't really what he seems to be. He's not a deity. He's something
He's a something.
Yeah.
He's a something, and you never know what something he is. I do that on purpose because I want people to make their own decisions. But he is using Noah, or he's trying to meddle again when he shouldn't be. He's using Noah to fix the problems that he created by meddling, and is going to fix them by meddling. So he's doing what he did before to fix this issue. He thinks that he's ruined mankind. So he's going to take this beautiful death that Noah's had, that's tragic and coincidental and all this, and he's basically seen an opportunity. He's identified that this guy could do him some favors. So all the time he's teaching him the lessons, he's doing his job, but he's gently nudging him towards one of the options in particular that he really wants him to take. So he's kind of meddling and convincing him to take this option that perhaps isn't the best option for Noah. And the question is whether Noah's going to fall for it or whether Noah's going to realize and make his own decision.
And you have
both.
And you would say that Mitch Albom inspired you.
Mitch Albom's well, in the death fantasy aspect of it, I wanted to write something that was easy to read. I mean, this book is not a massive description. You don't have to slog through pages of description. It's very short and snappy, one line, very heavy on the dialogue. It's very conversational between him and Noah, and that's the way I wanted it to be. And I didn't want it to be a full novel unless for some strange reason it develops into that before October. I wanted it to be just as long as it needs to be to get the point across that I want to get across. And I think that's how Mitch inspired me, because he gets his points across and he does it very well in a very light-hearted manner, and you take what you want from it and no more. And that's what I wanted. I don't want to write and offend people that are religious. I don't want to write and offend people that aren't. I just want to write something that's gently balanced in the middle. So whether you are religious or not, you can appreciate it on some level and make up your own mind as to the rest of it. Which is kind of where I am. I'm in the middle.
Are you in the middle?
I'm in the middle.
You're not. Are you agnostic? You still question?
A bit of both, yeah. A bit of both. I want to, but my scientific side says no. But I want to. So I'm a bit. I think that's the part of me that's writing this book, the bit that wants to. So
well, even your scientific parts get asked questions, though. Unfortunately, that part doesn't even have all the answers. If that part had all the answers, I'd be like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
I'm definitely not about what the Bible says. Unfortunately, it has no answers either. It's just a great story in terms of like Plato or Aristotle or Socrates or Sophocles or who have you, or even like, whoever else is writing in the ancient world. They didn't know what the hell they were talking about, and they wrote these long poetic passages. Shakespeare, King James, that's what that era was, wasn't it? And they were just putting words on paper, trying to control people.
Well, I don't want Christopher to be controlling. I haven't written my characters to be controlling. I wrote him to be guilty, even though he's trying to teach Noah that there is no such thing as guilt and it's eventually pointless, as is emotion, as is everything in the world. He yet still kind of feels this, and I think I wanted it to be where he'd observed and dealt with people for so long that he's kind of picked up the traits he's trying to teach them not to have. So I wouldn't say I wrote him to be controlling, but it is just, the story is what it is. That's all I can say. You take it at face value.
Well, I'm looking forward to reading it if you give me an opportunity, and if you make me buy it, I'll buy it too.
Definitely. I'm not going to make you buy it. Don't worry. I'll need beta readers.
Good. I volunteer. And well, this is my absolute longest Mirage at this particular point in time. I think we've made it to 1 hour and 16 minutes. How do you think we should sum up Mitch Albom?
Very talented, a really genuine, nice guy, does lots for charity, lots of strings to his bow. Check him out. It's worth it. You won't regret it.
I agree, he's talented. I think that he had 5 People You Meet When You Die and Tuesdays with Morrie were very, very unique novels or books. I did not enjoy Phone Calls from Heaven as much as I wanted to. As a skeptic reading it, I wanted more, and that last phone call was interesting, but not enough. I wanted more, and I expected more from him. The Timekeepers might give me it, and I will give it an opportunity. Maybe it's just pure fantasy, but in terms of those first 2 books, I wanted more from this author. And I don't know, maybe I'm just giving Mitch Albom a little bit too much of the magic, and he is just mortal like us all.
Yeah, I think there's a fine line.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a fine line, and I think he just sometimes he explores further over the line than he does in other books, which is why the Frankie Presto one or whatever it's called didn't grip me as much, because I like things that are above that line, and he just didn't go quite as far as I wanted him to. So I think you've just got to take each book for what it is, and if you don't make friends with one, try another, because they're all different in their own way. They all have different lessons, and they're all brilliant. And just read his books, because I'm a huge fan, and read his books.
Read books.
Read.
Read. Who are we going to do next?
Who do you want to do next? You pick.
No, you pick. You're my guest.
Oh God. I don't know. Let me have a look at. I don't know. Can I check my shelf and see who I've read recently, and then get back to you?
Who are your favorite authors? Let's go through a list.
Well, Well, we did Charline Harris, and I like
We did
her. We did
Charline
Stephen
Harris.
King. We've done
I don't
Mitch
know if I'm still
Albom.
saying her name correctly or not.
Charline. Charline.
Nobody ever yelled at me for that either. I still think she should write a book called Snooky the Vampire Hunter.
Snooky the Vampire Hunter. I don't know. I really don't know which one to go for next. I haven't read enough of Game of Thrones
And you
to go
hate
there.
J.K. Rowling? I didn't think that was illegal.
I don't hate anybody. I just dislike the whole Harry Potter thing. I'm just not a fan of Harry Potter. Leave me be.
Who did you read last? Who was the last book that you finished? Flip the cover to the end.
Tony Robbins.
Tony Robbins. We can't do him. Who
but
is
he's not speculative.
Yeah, he's not speculative.
I'm just trying to think off the top of my head. I'm mentally scanning my bookshelf to see if I can pick up on
I'm looking
an
here
author
too.
in particular. How about Lois? Is it Lois or Louise Lowry who did The Giver? I read The Giver.
Oh man, maybe that might actually we could do her. I've never heard of her before, but you know who else we could do? Joanna Penn. She writes thrillers, right? Isn't that
yeah, but I've only ever read her nonfiction. I've never read thrillers. I've only ever read nonfiction.
It doesn't. I don't think it really matters. I'm doing Edgar Rice Burroughs on Saturday with Jason Abbott, and I've never read a single word he wrote.
Oh, okay.
And according to Jason, he's never read a word he's written either. So we're basically going to geek out about an author we've never read before. We've only seen like movies that have been based on his work.
Okay. Yeah,
so I mean, we could do if you're interested in an author that you've wanted to read, like Mary Shelley. I'm doing in mid-September with another author, Frankenstein, and I've tried to read
Dracula. I read Dracula and liked Dracula.
I've read the first part of Dracula. I love it. I love the letters. I think Jonathan, what's his last name? Jonathan Hawker.
No idea.
The letters he writes home are magnificent. And I've read them several times, but I can't get into the latter part of that book. And that's like the real part. That's like the real story is the latter part of that book. I just can't get into it.
Well, I'll have a look at my bookshelf, and I'm sure between now and organising the next one, we can come up with somebody decent.
Sure, absolutely. And do you have anything else you want to say?
No, other than I'm hungry and I need a coffee. So that's my next part of call. Food.
Right. As always, very, very enjoyable, and thank you so much for joining me today.
No, thank you very much. Pleasure as always.
Alrighty. Bye-bye.
Bye.